Hello, everyone, and welcome to Expanding Your Alumni Network through Virtual Connections. My name is Katrina, and I am here at Remo as Team Remo. We want to thank you for joining us today for our panel discussion. But before we start our panel discussion, if you guys can hear me loud and clear, can you please do me a favor? In the general chat on the right-hand side of the screen, if you could please just type in a hello and what organization or university that you're with, or what your job title is there with that organization, so that we can all connect in just a little bit and do some networking. That would be awesome. So I'm going to start. I'm like, my name is Katrina, and I am with Team Remo. And that will populate in your general chat over on the right-hand side. If you guys could all do that for me. I just want to make sure that you guys see where that general chat is. We are going to be having a facilitated discussion today, and it's going to include some Q&A. So if you have a question, please go ahead and put it into the Q&A tab. That Q&A tab will make sure that we do not lose sight of any of your very important questions as they happen, because if they're in the chat, sometimes I can lose track of them. And if somebody's already asked a question that you have, so if I want to know why is the sky blue, I am going to put that into the Q&A. So if you guys can look at that Q&A tab, if somebody else has that same question, go ahead and click that upvote. It will rise to the top, and that way we will know that that is an important question and we want to get to it first. So welcome, everybody. Can I have a big thumbs up or an applause if you guys are excited to be here? If I'm coming through, you can click those Remoji buttons down in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. And the final piece is, if at any time you wish to see any of our presentation boxes larger, you can close down the audience view, which is directly right below us. You see a little icon on that bottom bar that has a screen with 3 people in front of it. If you click on that tab, it will make our tile boxes a little bit bigger. So thank you, everybody. Welcome to Pam from OWP Virtual, from Jacoby with Team Reps, Laura from Brown University. Congratulations to everyone for getting up, making this day amazing. I'm coming to you from sunny San Diego, California, where it is very early in the morning. And I know that we are coming in from all over the world. Kat from the ILF School of Theology, Brooke from University of Illinois. It's so nice to see you guys. And so we're going to go ahead and jump in. And I would like to introduce the 2 panelists who are here on screen with me. The first is Lindsay McGrath. Lindsay serves as the Director of Student and Young Alumni Programs at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. As a networker by nature, Lindsay is passionate about the relationship building and helping students and young alumni grow and realize the power in their professional networks. Having worked in alumni relations and student engagement, Lindsay is passionate about motivating and recruiting volunteers to become lifelong friends of the university. With experience developing and infusing philanthropy programs to support divisional goals, she is skilled at introducing the philanthropy pipeline to prepare students to engage with causes that matter to them. Thank you, Lindsay. Hi, good morning, and welcome to our discussion. Our other panelist today is Wei-Loon Leong, who was appointed as Director of International Alumni Engagement at the University of Buffalo in October of 2013. As a member of the Office of Alumni Engagement, Wei-Loon is responsible for the engagement of over 20,000 UB across the world with the university. Through continuous engagement with UB alumni and donors across the world, the number of international donors to UB increased 28%, and total gifts to UB more than doubled in the 2021 fiscal year, despite a global pandemic. As a native of Malaysia, Weilun returned to serve his alma mater after spending 8 years of his career in China, with his last position as Senior Manager of Business Administration of Beijing BISS International School and International Baccalaureate World School, offering kindergarten to grade 12 education to children of expatriate and the diplomatic community in Beijing. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Again, my name is Katrina. I am with Team Remo, and one of the unique things I can bring to this is that in my past life, I was the Director of Alumni Outreach and Engagement with San Diego State University's School of Journalism. And I was also an international student. I have my master's degree from the Moscow Art Theater and a university in Moscow, Russia. So I am super excited about this discussion. So hello, Lindsay. Hi, Weilun. How are you guys doing this morning?
Good morning. Doing great here in Massachusetts. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you
Thank
for
you,
being
Katrina.
Thank
It's starting
you.
to get fall. Well, snow is not snowing yet in Buffalo, but we'll see.
Oh yeah. See, I moved away from all that snow, so I get to have like that nice, happy sunshine all the time. So let's get started. One of the first things that we want to talk about, and why I love the balance that both of you guys bring, is that there's just not one type of alumni. And there's just not one message that alumni associations or alumni programs need to send out that's a coverall. So can you talk a little bit about the work that you specifically do with your programs and how you reach your demographics? Start with Lindsay.
Okay.
Sure. Okay, sure. So I think, Katrina, you are spot on. We are all working with so many different audiences, different life stages, and every group of alumni has very different needs. So I think it's really important that we have started to segment all of our programming and our marketing of said programming to really meet the needs of those alumni or students or other constituent groups like parents, that really we can give them what they need. So, Weilun, I'll let you share as well.
Sure. So for us, we basically segment them into three different groups. Basically, what we consider graduates of the last decade. We don't use age, but on that part, we look at 10 years after graduating from UB. The other thing is we look at age on the second segment. So folks in the 35 to 50, and then 50 and above. And then this really applies not just to our alums here in the States, but international as well.
And I do see that we have someone who's joined us from the Nanyang Technological Institute from our university from Singapore. So we do have some international folks in our audience today. And I'm sorry, Angie, if I just totally killed the name of your university. I'm so sorry. So with that foundation, we know that there's a different life cycle. And the messaging that needs to go out to the students at their different life cycle. How are you going to, well, first, what are the different stages? What are the, if we could break them down into 4 buckets, and how is the messaging that you need to send them different for each of their needs? Weilun, we can start with you, and then
Sure.
follow up with Lindsay.
Yep. So coming back to the goal term, right? Graduates of the last decade, usually fresh from graduation, they really are in need of career support, right? Career support and how to be successful in their career. The second age group or bucket, if you will, really is a combination of both. Some are in middle of the career, some are really prepared to give back to helping students with their career. Now then we talk about wisdom versus treasure, right? Treasure being gifts, and then wisdom being advice and whatnot. And we see more of treasure for 50 and above. So that's how we kind of segment them into 3 buckets, tailor messaging accordingly, and so far so good, I would say. We kind of do a review of these 3 buckets every year and see how they and again this applies to not just our alums here in the States, but international as well. Lindsay?
And Lindsay?
Yes, we use a few similar buckets, though I'd share we probably have a couple more. We also use the term GOLD, our graduates of the last decade. We also look at early career folks who are maybe more like 27 to 34. We look at mid-level career folks. We also look at retirees. And like we alluded to, our students are an important piece of the puzzle. Though we are the Alumni Relations Office, we're always trying to look at how we engage students with those alumni. So we do look at students as their own life stage too. And I think not only thinking about what they need, I think Weilun was spot on. Our recent graduates are really looking for career support, but I think some of our early career folks and even mid-level career folks are also looking for that career support, especially in the last 2 years, given the pandemic. I think a lot of people realized that either they were forced to reconsider their career path, or they took a little bit of reflective time and said, I think I need to make a change. And so not only are we looking at how our university can serve them, but we're looking at how the alumni life stages can really serve and support each other as well through our events. So I think it's been a bit of a different approach to segmentation, because it's not only what they need right now, but how can we get them to really highlight the power of the UMass alumni network overall. And sometimes that's not just one way information flow, but it's getting a conversation going.
Mm-hmm. And just backing on that, Lindsay, can you give a couple of examples about how that conversation is a little bit different in your messaging or in your approach as you're speaking to the individuals in their different life cycles?
Yes. I mean, I think for our recent grads, one of our biggest challenges is trying to get them to see themselves as alumni in the first place. Then that's why we try to introduce it while they are students, because, the word alumni is like, is that me? Does that apply to me? What is that? And what does that experience look like for me? So I think the messaging is tremendously important. We really, for our gold alumni, that is my focus as the director for students and young alumni. For our young alumni, it's really trying to highlight not only the connections they can make and the career support available to them, but that we have a lifetime of benefits available too. And I think that's the biggest change is we have to really get in front of them early, or they won't suddenly come back and re-engage with us when they are mid-career or late career. We want them to stay connected that entire time. So for them, the messaging really differs in that way, because we have to pique their interest. We do need to tell them there's something in it for them, because certainly we all know our alumni are being bombarded by messages from all over, and oftentimes from multiple universities, as we are working with folks who have undergraduate degrees, graduate degrees. Perhaps they went to private high schools who are doing similar, or secondary schools who are doing similar outreach. So I think we need to really cut through the noise. We do need to say, what is in this for me? And then once we've piqued their interest, we can begin to share a bit more.
Awesome. And Weilun, do you have any other additional tips or?
Yes. So for us, and looking at the life cycle of an alum and also a student, right? You kind of need to start early, if you will, work with student clubs. So I do outreach with our international student clubs on campus as well, and try to pitch the value of alumni, because the first time someone hears about alumni, they're like, what's in it for me? To Lindsay's point, right? What's in it for me? Alumni is just so far away, don't know, but really working with them and then invite. So that's the other point of engagement, right? You invite alums to be part of a student event and say, hey, I'm alum. I never knew what an alum is, but here I am, right? Now I'm giving back. So you create that cycle, or what my alumni volunteer in Singapore would like to call it an ecosystem, way earlier before graduation. So, yeah.
And I like that idea of the ecosystem, and that's going to get a good pivot, because I know that, a lot of universities, a lot of your alumni aren't going to settle down in the house that's right next to the university. And, with my experience with San Diego State, San Diego is a pretty big city. A lot of people do stay here. But even to get my alumni who are in the same city with me, about 5 miles down the road, to come to my events when they were all in person, it was a challenge. And so, Lindsay, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about your strategy for domestic, and Weilun, I'd like to talk to you about your strategy for international, about how you can keep these segments feeling close, feeling connected, feeling like they really are still part of that ecosystem, when they may or may not be 5 minutes down the road. They may be across country. They may be, even in the next town over. Or, Weilun, in your case, we're going to discuss one of your best practices, which I love. So everybody get ready for it, is, some experiences with your international graduate students all the way around the world. So, Lindsay, can you just talk about some of your
Sure.
domestic?
Yeah, I mean, great point, Katrina. So our university is located about 90 miles outside of Boston. So everyone hears Massachusetts, they say, "Oh, that's a small state. You must be right near Boston." And it's like, no, we're not super close. However, the majority of our young alumni do move out to that area. So for a long time, that's been a major focus, is really bringing programming to Boston, because we know that on any weeknight post work, they can't make it out to our Amherst campus. Well, fast forward to the pandemic, and here we are, sort of needing to pivot, but ultimately finding success that I think will carry us forward. So what I think is really important is that, prior to, the last 18 months or so, we used to look at virtual engagement as it sort of felt more like an afterthought, to be honest, in terms of, we certainly wanted to engage folks from across the country. We don't have a huge program built at the moment for international engagement, so I will let Weilun speak about that part. But in terms of across the country, we didn't really have a lot of ways to engage people if we weren't doing an in-person event in their city. Well, fast forward, here we are, and now we've got technology available to us that allows people to really feel a little bit closer. So I will share, we do use the Remo platform at the University of Massachusetts. And I think for us, it's been able to help us bridge the gap, not only in terms of virtual engagement. I think we've been using that phrase, virtual engagement, but instead of passive engagement, like a webinar where we're talking at people, we're able to get people to really control their own experience and to be able to create a very comparable networking experience to one that they'd be able to do in person. However, they can call in now from California, from Texas, from Washington, D.C. It's really helped us bridge the gap and find opportunities not only for young alumni to engage more quickly, but for prospect engagement. So for those of you who may be working with your colleagues in development who are doing fundraising, I just think it's really important to point out, we may not have had engagement opportunities before that were so readily available for some of those prospects we really wanted to connect with students, but now we can do that. So that's that. I'll pause there and
Yeah. Well, and I think that really goes into some of the heart of Weilun had alluded to earlier, of wisdom versus treasure. And Lindsay, in a prior discussion that we'd have, you talk about that you're seeing that alumni of the different levels want to know that they're supporting people, not necessarily an institution. Like they want to see, and that wisdom versus treasure, if they're given that wisdom, it's very, very direct, and they can be across the city, they can be across the campus.
Well, that's exactly it, right? Even
Weilun, I think you have a little bit of feedback.
Oh, okay.
Hopefully I'm still good here. Okay, great. So even though to your point, you may be 5 miles down the road, but that may not have been so convenient, especially in California traffic. But needless to say, especially with our prospects, I think people are sometimes comfortable supporting an initiative at a university. But working with donors, you want to be able to get them in front of our students to actually feel like they're getting a glimpse of what's going on campus, what those students' needs are. And, we invest in people. We don't invest in buildings, though sometimes that's an afterthought or a benefit, I should say, of said investment. But this, using Remo, for example, has really allowed our prospects and students to have those meaningful connections, and we're able to see some results down the line in development as well.
And that's a perfect lead into Weilun, where I love the things that you described that University of Buffalo is doing to engage the international audience, because I am on the other end of that. I am a reverse international alumni, and I love some of the things that you're doing. So can you tell us about like how you've built the foundation for international engagement, how you're keeping folks who literally have significant geopolitical barriers or, significant barriers that have come up because of COVID and restricted travel internationally, how you're keeping them feeling like they are a very significant part of the university still?
Yeah, so prior to COVID, and this prior to COVID, when in-person events and opportunities are possible, I travel to Asia primarily because that's primarily where our alums are. Events are events, but more so, to be very targeted and strategic about, who our prospects are. And some of our prospects really are, high-level career folks in their respective companies. So one example that I shared with Katrina before this was bringing students to China, specifically in Volkswagen. Volkswagen China is a major car brand in mainland China. And one of our alums, she's a senior VP over at that organization. So we bring students there to visit VW, get a tour and look at fancy cars and things like that. But more so, one of a international business class I co-teach was to have students work on projects. So what happened almost 4 years ago now, and over a course of 2 years, this alum offered the opportunity for our students to create a customer service plan for electric vehicles that are sold in China for VW. Over the course of 2 years, his students, MBA students, worked on this, and eventually things got launched. And so we're really proud of the fact that our customer service plan for VW in China has our students' footprint. So this model has kind of expanded. Now, our alum in Singapore is also offering a project for them. So long story short, we're bringing engagement opportunities to our alums, but also helping them see, hey, UB is global. We're not just in Buffalo, New York, in Western New York, having classes here, but we're really trying to expand our global footprint. You can be part of it, and they're happy to be part of it. They're in this ecosystem, and they're like, well, if I can contribute my wisdom, but slowly cultivate that treasure, and these two alums in China and Singapore, they became annual donors, and now we're moving on to a major gift on that part. So bringing it to them versus yes, they can get on a plane, which is still impossible. But over the past 18 months, I've been very, very fortunate to have alums in the Middle East reach out to me. So we actually have our UAE chapter established in July last year, right in the middle of all the COVID craziness, if you could put it. And Turkey's in the works, and all came about because of virtual engagement opportunities. They came to a virtual event and say, well, don't forget me. I'm in Turkey and I'm in UAE. So, I said, well, let's work together, put together a steering committee, and let's go for it. And try be a risk taker. I operate in the sense that let's go for it. You never try, you never know.
So it sounds like part of your strategy is to really analyze like clusters of where your international students are and then form them into their own associations. Do you have like a representative, or is there just like, hey, we're all going to get together and figure out what we can do to help support because we're all UB alums together?
Right. So I look at so in our reports in our database we have what is called an engagement score. So an engagement score is pretty much like a report card that you get in grade school, right? So every alum who participates or does anything with us, whether it's attending an event or making a gift or talking to our students, they get points. So when I decide to plant a flag, if you will, that's a term that in our office we use that. Then I go to Turkey, for example, and say, okay, who's got the highest engagement score? Who are our most potential person who could help with planting the flag? Reaching out sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. And sometimes, just very lucky to have people raise their hand and say, hey, I want to do that. And then from there, I'll just share the list with them and say, these are the most engaged folks. Let's reach out, put a steering committee together. Let's get an event going, virtually, of course, for now. And from there, then you look at, different opportunities. And you got to tailor your events too. Some could be more career focused, some could just be social events, but some could be an outing to a park or something, when in person was possible. So it really is a lot of survey, a lot of understanding your customers. It all comes back to the sales process, and making sure that your alums' interests are fulfilled, and go from there.
And Lindsay, it sounds like some of those techniques could be, utilized domestically. Do you guys do anything like that where you have like, okay, so here's our San Diego chapter, or here's our Midwest chapter?
Sure. We also use an engagement score model. So I'm glad you mentioned that. It's a great way to identify some of your potential or future volunteers. We do have a bit of a regional network structure, though sort of going through a bit of a remodel right now. But ultimately, it's our goal too to use actually virtual engagement to allow those volunteers across the country to pull together their own events that maybe they need minimal support from us to be able to do. So that's sort of on our goal list too, is finding the people who are the thought leaders in particular areas and finding out what works for that area. What might be attractive in Washington, D.C. is very different than what's attractive out in California or here in Massachusetts. So I think we really just try to listen to what our volunteers are telling us about their particular geographic region, and then trying to find those underpinnings that tie back to UMass, because ultimately that's what everybody has in common, is our university.
That's awesome. And it sounds like, we have just demographics into different demographics. And so we have the life cycle, we have the location. And Weilun, one thing that we talked about is understanding, just like Lindsay, domestically understanding the different regional needs. What about the different cultural considerations?
Culture consideration, the key here is to not be afraid to ask questions. And the alums understand that, because I'm fortunate to be able to understand a lot of the East Asia, South Asia culture, but I'm still learning too. I mean, our alums in India would always remind me about the culture in North India versus South India, things like that. But alums you'll be very surprised. They'll be so eager to help, and also help you with answering some of your culture questions, right? Reading, that helps, but also don't forget to ask your counterparts too. So we international advancement professionals, we have a WhatsApp group, we have a WeChat group that we constantly share information and whatnot. CASE is our association for advancement professionals. So I just put together in July we got 60 of us together over virtually to talk about challenges traveling and things like that. So there's a lot of help and support. You just got to take the first step out there and ask. And don't be afraid to make mistakes, and always learn from mistakes, but at the same time take the fun ride. So
I think that's really, really important advice. And now, so switching, because we've both mentioned virtual events and connecting virtually, and I've heard a lot of really, really creative and great ideas about how people are engaging virtual that are going to continue once everything goes back to the new normal. For things like, for example, for homecoming. Homecoming it's in the title, homecoming. It's that weekend for alumni to come and gather, but a lot can't come back to it. So people are doing virtual activities for homecoming. So they're live streaming the game and letting everybody come on a platform and watch it together, or they're having their class reunions on a platform virtually, and then like an entire group, and then they're segmenting off to their own classes. Lindsay, I know when we talked, you had mentioned, going back to that, I want to support people and not necessarily an institution. Like I want to see that I make a difference. So can you guys tell me a couple of the different events that you've been working on or that you've hosted that have been like really successful and that you've heard back from your alumni? They're like, oh my gosh, this is really cool. And Lindsay, I'm setting you up for at least one of them right now.
Sure. Yeah, no, a couple ideas I can share that come to mind. I think homecoming is a great place to start. Last year we did host an entirely virtual homecoming out of need, but this year we're hosting a hybrid homecoming first weekend in November. And we've deliberately scheduled a week-long series of programming that is virtual, leading up to some in-person events over the weekend. But to your point, we really, now that we've broken down some of those geographic barriers, we cannot ignore that going forward. We need to keep creating these opportunities that people can plug in from anywhere. And I think the other piece too is, instead of just offering a campus tour virtually, which is one thing we're doing, we're specifically highlighting some of our student campus tour guides so that they can be there to actually answer those questions like they were there on a real tour. They can talk about their experience as a student. And I think, any chance that we can get that interaction to happen, and although online, it's still meaningful. The other piece, or the other event I would love to share with everybody, is our virtual networking events that we have pulled together. We've done several at this point and have another one coming up October 13th. But we've really started using the Remo tool. I know I keep mentioning it, but I'm happy to talk to you all more about this platform later, because it's really, really helping us accomplish goals that we couldn't have done through Zoom. And so we're hosting a networking night that we're hoping to have about 300 people or so, to really get our students and our young alumni to be able to engage with those C-suite executives who are our assigned prospects, and to be able to get them to have meaningful conversations. And, our ultimate goal for students in both our recent grads is to help them really grow their networks, make new connections, and realize the power of this lifelong community of support that's here for them through their relationship with the university. And so what we've heard from students and the alumni who are a little more established as well is, they love being in control of their experience. They love that we don't have to only have passive engagement opportunities when it comes to virtual. They like that they are in control of their experience. They can move around. They can find the people they want to talk to. And all of our students have really left the event saying, wow, that's a really cool new way to do it. We identified with our campus community that all of our students were attending classes online only, so largely through Zoom. And so just to be able to come into a new platform that didn't feel like class, it felt like an event to them, really made a difference. We like to share with them a list of all of the alumni who have signed up to be there, and we let them know where in the room they can find those alumni. So the students have the ability to navigate around and find those people that they really want to talk to. I think the other bit of success we've had that I would really want to point out is just how valuable our time has become. I think as those of you who are maybe shifting back to an on-campus model for events now, I don't know if you're finding how exhausting it is becoming to bop from event to event or meeting to meeting in person. And honestly, that's the same for both our alumni and students, whether they are coming from work, coming from class, trying to fit in everything in their day, much like we are as professionals who have lives outside of work. It's similar for our constituents. And I think we need to keep considering that going forward as it relates to virtual engagement. Our goal of virtual engagement, we need to break down the barriers and make it easier for people to attend events, not more challenging. So I think going forward, virtual events are no longer an afterthought. They've become a priority, a necessity, and it's truly a lesson learned for us that we can really reach a lot more people with it, honestly, a more cost-effective way, and a way that really respects our staff time as well, and how we spend our time.
And I like that because you're planting the seeds with all of these foundational items that you're doing with your students, and even like Weilun with your MBA class. How valuable that experience is, how valuable those 5 to 10 minutes are with an alumni. They're going to remember that when it comes their time and be like, somebody did that for me, and now I want to do that to help somebody else. Because at the heart of human nature, we all just want to help. So I'm gonna, before we switch into Q&A, I just like to talk to Weilun for 1 second to see if you have any things that you have done, that you have events that you have hosted in the virtual space, or any best practices that you have that have really worked for University of Buffalo. Sorry, I have my guest host who just decided to jump up. This is Luna. She just decided to join us.
Really, for me, when it comes to the virtual space, I've been very fortunate to be able to try out virtual tools for us and we actually don't use a single platform for every chapter or network. My role, my thought and belief is always, what does the customer want? And if they prefer Zoom, if they prefer Teams, if they prefer Clubhouse, things like that, let's go with it. And virtual has really yielded returns in the sense that we have folks who are not just attending events from this particular geographic area. For example, the UAE network or chapter, and now the Turkey. The volunteers who raised their hands to want to help with getting a chapter together, they attended an event in Singapore. They attended an event in a virtual event that were hosted by folks in Malaysia and Singapore. So the geographical barriers are broken down, right, first of all, but also, when they see the value, don't forget us, we're in UAE, we're in Turkey, we can do the same. And that becomes a little bit of a competitive thing. But that's the thing. Virtual is breaking down barriers, is allowing our alums from different geographic areas to attend events, regardless of time zones and geographical barriers. So try. That's all I can say.
And I love that piece of advice, because the other thing that I know, other than people really at their heart want to give back, is that they are competitive as all get out. So if you have two associations going, oh, they just did this, oh, they just did this, people love competition. And I've heard reports, and I work with a nonprofit, that we've seen 3, 4, 5 times increase in fundraising and donations over the past year because of the extended reach that virtual has. And with the pandemic, people they can't go out, so they've had a little bit more in their pocket. But
so, Katrina, I was just going to add lastly too, from our perspective, we've doubled our engagement numbers through virtual engagement. We've increased our young alumni registrants by 90% by having options that work with their schedule, and our rated prospects too by 80%. So it is really important as it ties to fundraising, which we're all here to support that fundraising funnel as well. So I just thought it was worth mentioning.
Yeah, and again, keeping that in mind, it's the wisdom versus the treasure, and I love the approach that you guys are taking, because to be honest, when I was a brand new alumni right out of college, I just got nailed by my alumni association for give us money. I'm like, I don't have any money. I'm an actor, like legitimately, and I have student loan. Like, I don't have money. I have time, but I don't have money. But they weren't asking for my time.
We have to value that too. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay, we're going to transition now into some Q&A. If you guys have questions out there in the audience, you can put them in the Q&A. If you would like to come up on stage and ask them, I would love to have you come up here. You just hit the raise hand button at the very bottom. But the first question that we have for you is for Weilun, and it's about your engagement score for planting a flag. So what do you consider engagement actions that get a higher engagement score on that scale? It would be really great if we could understand how you track it, so that we could, use some of those best practices in alignment with our analytics, or having an event, on a topic that is really important to your folks, to help drive those engagement rates up. And I know, Lindsay, you use them too, but I'm going to start with Weilun, and then Lindsay, we'll go to you afterwards.
Right. So for our engagement score, we, as much as we try to be uniform, regardless of demographics, right? Whether it's international or domestic. So how we started was, okay, let's have a 100 points as a full score, and then you look at events. Okay, events is one. Volunteering. So volunteering could be, coming to campus or online, talking to students and sharing that, making a gift. For the domestic scorecard, there's a season ticket holder for like athletics. They go to a football game and things like that. Unfortunately, we can't have that for international because they won't come to it. So you just have to tailor and then put a cap on because you don't want alums to just keep coming to events. And so like for example, for an event, if they attend an event, it's 2 points. But you don't want alums to come to 50 events and get 100 points. You want them to do different things. So you cap different category, and then say, okay, this alum has not really been volunteering that much, which is okay. But let's look at how you can drive this person to volunteer more or giving more, and then from that you can say, oh, well, this alum on a profile or as a group has really done a lot more on giving. So then let's ask for gifts, right? If this person has done more on volunteering, then maybe we can have he or she as a speaker, or also work with like the projects, so really a lot of data analytics, and then we have a 36 months cycle. So an alum who does things 3 years before that resets to 0, and then we just have to continue doing that. So it's not a one-off. You get 100 points and then you're done. So then what do you do? So you just continue that.
The only other two things, we use those same categories. We also look at email open rates and click-throughs. We also look at social media, and I think we refresh our score about every 6 months.
And then do you have best practices, about like subcategories or any other additional things that you find, like you're 6 months through a campaign, about 4 weeks in, you're starting to note trends? Do you have any best practices around that?
So best practices, I would say, just looking at the engagement score when COVID hit, and we're like, well, they can't come to in-person events, so let's focus on volunteering, right? They can become a guest speaker for our lifelong learning webinar series, right? Now, if they're kind of falling short on the giving side, then do we want to talk to them and say, well, you've done so much with volunteering, we thank you for that, but we have this student emergency funds, would you consider doing that, right? So to up them on the giving side. Now events, virtual events, so folks who are not doing so well, if you will, in the event score, then we're like, okay, well, we have virtual events, come to that, and then so it's a lot of very targeted engagement, if you will.
And is that how you then direct your messaging to each of those different demographics?
Yes, that's how you and messaging could be. I find social media to be so much more powerful and effective, at least in Asia, and at least in the constituents that I engage with. So, email has really not been doing well for us. So and again, Facebook doesn't work in China, so you don't use Facebook and Twitter, then you use WeChat, right? And to put together a social media team that is so customized, we can't afford full-time FTEs to do that, or paid interns. So what I did was really assemble a team of international students, and we've been doing this for 5 years now. And say, well, I would like an international student from China just to be responsible for WeChat, and then Korea would be Line. That is something that is very popular with, or Kakao as well, and then have them work on it and give them academic credits. So
I love that you leverage that internal talent that you already have, who know the culture, who obviously it's going to be their native language for the most part, so they'll understand all those differences way better. I love that as a best practice. And Lindsay, what are some of the tools that you're finding that are working for you guys? Are you seeing the same things with email versus social, or?
I still think we're largely a culture dependent on email with our constituents. I think we've had a lot of success really just meeting students where they are. So again, half of my work does focus on the student experience as well. So really leveraging our partnerships with career services and academic advising and some of their student organizations. I think that is really where we've tried to focus, not so much on the social media, because again, there's a lot of noise to cut through. So with some of Weilun's constituents, I think that makes perfect sense what you've shared. And then for us, we try to just meet people where they are. Our social media has limited participation. So instead we try to encourage our partners to share our social content as well, just to really get it out on the accounts that people have come to really rely on and trust a little bit more.
I love that. And so I see that our countdown timer has reached zeros. I'm going to ask for any last questions that anybody in the audience may have for either of our two experts around, young alumni engagement with alumni through the life cycles, international engagement, because I think, Weilun, I think what you guys are doing is very much at the front of the wave and the forefront, because I know that a lot of my experiences have been with international students, and they've all felt like, I went there and then I went back home. And I really love some of these best practices. I could talk with both of you guys for like 3 more hours on these, but I just want to see if there's any last questions, if there's any last things that Weilun or Lindsay, you'd like to leave us with before we head back down to conversation mode, because they will both be at tables, as will myself and some of the other Remo staff, if you have more one-on-one questions for any of us. Lindsay?
Sure. I'd like to end with just sharing in terms of virtual, not just virtual programming, but virtual networking specifically, since networking is at the core of what I love to do and try to encourage others to take advantage of. I think that virtual networking has really boosted our engagement, like I shared some of those metrics. And I think it's not only changed, but created opportunities for engagement that weren't there before. So I do think going forward, we really need to learn something from this experience of being forced into a virtual environment and keep that really as part of our toolkit going forward, so that we can complement our in-person events with these actually impactful virtual opportunities.
And I don't mean to interrupt, but we do have a Q&A that just came in, and it ties into what you were saying, Lindsay. They're wondering if you've had any entertainment-specific events for students and alumni to provide them with the opportunity to casually network. If so, how has that been going? So some of those more casual. And this is what
casual,
I love this about some of these virtual platforms, especially Remo, is that I know a lot of LMS systems are really great with the asynchronous, but they're lacking with the socialization. They're lacking with building that social culture and that social construct, even on your campus and afterwards. So I like this question. Thank you, whoever asked it.
Yeah, that's what we've heard too, is the synchronous versus asynchronous challenge. Specifically out of our office for the young alumni, we've done a few trivia nights, for example, where people have been able to make connections there. But ultimately for our students, they're able to access those experiences through our student activities office. We have 350 student clubs and organizations who have been able to provide some of that experience. But I would say what nobody else is providing is the opportunity to specifically connect with alumni. So rather than trying to reinvent the wheel, we're really trying to look at our focus area of those career connections, because that's what they're clamoring for. So we aim to provide what they're asking us for.
Perfect. And I'll give the last word to Weilun.
Sure. My last words would be try, and take risks. Talk to your partners, talk to your counterparts in other institutions. Talk to your campus partners, and open up the window to working together and say, well, I'm used to doing in person, but now in the space, yes, we will return to in person eventually. Who knows when? But let's move on the path of having it virtual for now. And the tools are out there. There's so many tools out there. Remo is new to me, but I'm loving it. Just the fact that seeing all these tables and being on a stage and whatnot. So try, take risks. Don't be afraid to learn from someone too. So.
Awesome. Thank you guys so very much. And for anyone who wants to connect with Weilun and Lindsay, when we go to conversation mode, I have banners up where it's a link to their LinkedIn profiles. And we're going to go down into conversation mode right now. And we'll keep the building open for as long as people want to stay here and hang out. And I really want to thank you so very much for joining us here today. We really appreciate you taking the time out and helping us, just really enlighten everybody else who's out there struggling with, how do we do this engagement in the new normal, and how do we even, start an international program. So thank you guys so very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
So we'll see everybody back down at the tables.